King Behanzin, the last independent ruler of the Kingdom of Dahomey, stood at the edge of a storm, one that would change the destiny of his people and challenge the very sovereignty of African kingdoms. His reign, though brief, was marked by a fierce resistance to French colonial expansion, an unyielding defense of cultural pride, and a legacy that continues to inspire stories of courage and conviction across the African continent. Born in 1840 for his Kondo, Behanzin was the son of King Leal, one of Dahomey's most formidable rulers. From an early age, Kondo was immersed in the traditions of leadership and war. Dahomey, a powerful West African kingdom located in what is now Benin, had built its strength on disciplined military organization, spiritual belief systems, and a highly centralized monarchy. Its famed all-female military corps, the Mino, often called the Dahomey Amazons, symbolized the kingdom's fierce independence and martial prowess. Into this legacy, Behanzin was born and raised not as a passive heir, but as a warrior prince groomed for the burdens of sovereignty. When his father passed in 1889, Behanzin was chosen as king through a traditional succession ceremony. The coronation marked the beginning of his rule. During an era of escalating European imperialism in Africa, the Berlin Conference had only recently carved up the continent among colonial powers, with ruthless disregard for indigenous nations. France, hungry to dominate West Africa, viewed Dahomey as both a strategic and symbolic prize. Yet Behanzin, now king, was not willing to trade freedom for diplomacy. From the moment he ascended the throne, Behanzin demonstrated a fierce resolve to protect Dahomey's autonomy. He reorganized his military, fortified cities, and reasserted control over trade routes, particularly those leading to the coast, where the French had established footholds in places like Porto Novo and Cotonou. The French claimed commercial treaties and protectorate agreements to justify their presence, but Behanzin rejected all claims of foreign authority. To him, these treaties were either forced, manipulated, or outright fabrications. He famously refused to meet French officials who demanded submission, declaring that no European power had the right to dictate the affairs of his kingdom. He sent envoys back with messages of sovereignty, not servitude. When the French continued to press forward demanding control over the coastal town of Cotonou, Behanzin answered with force. The First Franco-Dahomeyan War broke out in 1890. Dahomeyan warriors, both men and women, fought with astonishing bravery, attacking French forts and convoys with strategic precision. The Mino warriors in particular led daring nighttime raids and ambushes that shocked French commanders, though the Dahomeyan weapons were often outdated compared to the French rifles and artillery. The sheer discipline and fighting spirit of Behanzin's forces made victory far from easy. After a series of brutal engagements, the French managed to hold Cotonou, but failed to subdue Dahomey entirely. A temporary peace was negotiated, but both sides knew that the truce would not last. Behanzin refused to accept any arrangement that threatened his kingdom's independence. He spent the next 2 years rebuilding his forces, gathering intelligence, and preparing for the inevitable. The Second Franco-Dahomeyan War erupted in 1892, and it was even more ferocious than the first. Behanzin led his troops personally, riding a royal lion as a symbol of fearlessness and divine authority. His generals launched wave after wave of counterattacks, utilizing knowledge of the terrain and jungle warfare to frustrate the French advance. The Mino once again proved formidable, charging fearlessly into battle, even as artillery shells rained down. But despite the valor of his warriors, Behanzin faced overwhelming odds. The French brought in thousands of reinforcements, equipped with machine guns and modern cannons. Villages were burned, sacred groves were desecrated. The capital, Abomey, was bombarded and eventually fell. Still, Behanzin did not surrender. Instead, he retreated into the forest with his most loyal fighters, launching a guerrilla resistance that lasted for months. The French offered rewards for his capture and attempted to coerce local chiefs to betray him, but Behanzin remained elusive, becoming a symbol of unbroken resistance. When supplies ran out and the suffering of his people grew too great, Behanzin finally agreed to negotiate. In 1894, he was captured not as a coward, but as a king who had exhausted every means to protect his nation. He surrendered with dignity, refusing to kneel before the French general, and instead presenting his sword as a sovereign ruler, not a subject. The French exiled him to Martinique and later to Algeria, where he lived in dignified but painful isolation. He never returned to his homeland. Even in exile, Behanzin continued to teach his children about Dahomey's history, instilling in them the same pride and defiance that had defined his reign. He died in 1906, thousands of miles from the land he had once ruled. Yet Behanzin's legacy did not die with him. In Benin, he is honored as a national hero. His resistance to French imperialism became a foundational story in the country's journey toward independence. Statues of him stand tall, his image etched into currency, his story told in schools. Modern African scholars have revisited his legacy not just as a warrior king, but as a symbol of Pan-African resistance against colonialism. Culturally, Behanzin also left an imprint on the arts. He was known as a patron of music and dance, and his court maintained elaborate rituals that blended military discipline with spiritual practice. He understood the power of cultural identity and used it as a weapon as potent as any rifle. His use of symbols such as the lion he rode into battle and the shark he used as his royal emblem were more than mere pageantry. They were expressions of spiritual connection and psychological warfare. One of the most remarkable aspects of Behanzin's story is how his resistance fits into the broader tapestry of African defiance. While many African rulers chose to collaborate or negotiate with colonial powers to preserve some degree of autonomy, Behanzin stood firm. He refused to cede an inch of sovereignty, even when it became clear that defeat was near. His stand was not naive, it was principled. To him, freedom was not negotiable, and he was not alone. His resistance inspired contemporaries across the continent, from Samori Touré in the west to Menelitu in the east. Though many of these kingdoms were eventually overrun by European forces, the memory of their resistance became fuel for the liberation movements of the 20th century. Today, King Behanzin's story reminds us that colonialism was not met with silence. It was met with fire, steel, and the unbreakable will of leaders who refused to be erased. In a world where narratives often cast Africa as a passive victim, Behanzin stands as a sharp correction of man who ruled with pride, fought with honor, and never forgot the dignity of his people. His life was a battle hymn for independence, a final roar from one of Africa's great lion kings. Though he lost his throne, he kept his soul and in doing so, gave his people something far greater than territory, a legacy of courage that endures to this day.